mabibigyan kayo ng pagkakataon na magkaroon ng maiksing question and answer. So without further ado, may I now call on our, nalito ko na invocation. For our invocation, let us call on Selena Raterta, Polly, for our prayer.
Hello, everybody.
Hindi ko mababa yung power ko. Sorry, this is I'm having a technical glitch right now.
Hello, everybody. Let us pray.
Hi.
Almighty God, you have made us in your own image and given us the power over the rest of your creation. Enable us to develop the economy of this nation in a way suited to the needs of its people. Provide, we pray, the financial resources required. Help us to make good use of all human resources, and help us to learn from our mistakes. I also pray, Lord, for all the country's safety. I ask that you help those that live here and safe from others who would do harm, from being free, for worshiping you, and for allowing people to speak freely. Lord, I continue to pray for this country's prosperity. Even in hard times, I thank you for your hand in already helping those who do not have homes, jobs, and more. I pray for the Philippines and other countries where migrants have called their homes. I pray, Lord, that our people continue to find ways to bless those that feel alone or helpless. Again, Lord, I pray from a place of thankfulness that I have been given a gift serving you. Thank you for all of our blessings. Thank you for your provisions and protections. Lord, I thank you for this club and its projects. Lord, may we give thanks to the leaders of this club, and may they lead this club in your name. May they also help schools and communities. Lord, we give gratitude for the opportunity to serve this club. In the name of the Almighty, amen.
Thank you, Polly, for our national anthem. Secretary Ice, please.
Silanganan, hanap ng puso, sa titik ko'y buhay. Lupang linis, tulad ka na ng marinig, sa panulubi, di ka pasisikin, sa tagas tulog sa simoy, sa langit mong uhaw, may bilang ang tula, at awasaw, dayang inamahal, ang islat ng mata, may tagumpay na naglilinig. Ay matitigil, lupa ng araw na lumalhati pagsintang buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaw
For the four-way test, let us now call on Rotarian Noel Quintana. We're having problems with our screen sharing.
Can you show the four-way test at least?
Apologies.
The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. One, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Say, is it fair to all concerned?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build, ay, nawala. Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Yes?
And the answer is yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Rotarian Noel. Rotarian Noel is also in New York City. Now for welcome remarks, let me call on the president of the Rotary Club of Kagitingan Cubao. I'm very proud to introduce him to you, President Alvin Mangona.
Hi. Hello. Thank you. Thank you very much, Titi Dory. And welcome to our Rotarians from abroad, no? Yung Satellite Club, at saka yung ating mga guests from all over the world. Good morning from Manila. And I am happy to see you all here. And this time we'll be talking about updates of Philippine tax law. Alam nyo, ang palagi ko lang naiisip dito whenever I think of tax is, ito ay personal understanding ko lang naman, and maybe this will be corrected later on. Tax is the lifeblood of the country. Kumbaga, ito yung magdadala or magdadala doon sa project ng government kung masasabi na matuloy ang ating projects through the tax na binabayad ng mga tao. Sa bahay naman, on a personal level, sabi nga, no money, no honey, di ba? Kumbaga, importante rin that we have a running fund to sustain our needs. It's basically the same thing. And niniwala ako na later on, ang isa sa pag-uusapan din, ano ba yung bago ngayon sa Philippine tax laws, and then dito makikita rin natin ano-ano bang klase ng tax ang meron na kailangan nating maintindihan. Ang isa dito, from my end, is the inheritance tax na sinasabi, o real estate tax. Kasama rin yun. So, this is going to be a very exciting discussion, and let's all sit back and enjoy. We have a very good speaker, and I'd like to turn over to next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Alvin. Are you in Tagaytay now or in Parañaque?
I'm in Parañaque actually. Nandito ako sa gym, and hopefully hindi kayo na-disturb sa ingay sa background.
Nakakatuwa kasi yung I was just reading the chat box and I see what Dean Barcelona Delia said. The beauty of technology, we come from all over and yet we are one tonight. True,
Yeah.
very, very true.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Merong mga nasa New York City ngayon. My auntie's here, Ida Roy. And welcome, Auntie. And of course, the members of the Rotary Club were based in New York. Arizona, California, and we have guests also from many parts of the United States and the Philippines. At ang diretso na tayo, pupunta na tayo sa ating pinakahihintay na sharing na ating speaker. And to introduce our speaker is none other than the chair of the Rotary Club of Kagitingan Cubao Satellite Online. And this is none other than Rotarian Doris Vanasdale. She is based in Arizona. Rotarian Doris, Chair. Doris?
Naka-unmute pala ako. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Loud and
Can you hear
clear. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Doris.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock here in the evening in Arizona. Hello from Arizona. I'm honored to introduce to everybody tonight Attorney Virginia Viray for our webinar today on updates of tax laws in the Philippines. Attorney Virginia Viray is the head of the Tax Practice Group and co-head M&A of PJS Law. Attorney Viray is a senior partner and head of PJS Law Tax Practice Group, and she co-head its mergers and acquisitions practice group. She's a lawyer and a certified public accountant and a certified anti-money laundering specialist. She is a senior lecturer of taxation law and corporation law at the University of the Philippines College of Law and a bar review lecturer for the UP Law Center Bar Review Institute. Her firm, PJS Law, is a full-service law firm based in Rockwell, Makati City, which has currently 60 lawyers. PJS Law takes pride in being consistently ranked in the top tier by the world's most influential legal and financial publications. The firm has a robust practice in energy law, infrastructure, corporate mergers and acquisitions, banking and capital markets, labor and employment, litigation, intellectual property, real estate, and taxation. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome our resource person for tonight, Attorney Virginia Viray.
Good day to everyone. Good morning to those in the Philippines. Good evening to those in New York and everywhere else in the US. Thank you for the kind introduction, Doris, and thank you, Sis Dory, for the invitation. Allow me please to share a screen. Okay. Okay. Can you see the screen? Oops. I should probably go back. Okay. Can you see the screen? Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, sis.
Okay. Okay. So let's get started. On a weekend, we'll be discussing tax. I hope you're up to the tax discussion. We'll keep it light, no? Hopefully, you'll have some useful information, but not too much information. I'll try not to make it a bar review lecture for tax. Okay, since the invitation was for the satellite club, no, this talk is really focused more on the non-resident Filipinos or the former Filipinos residing abroad, specifically in the US. But hopefully, it will also be useful for those who are in the Philippines. Okay. Just an overview. So we'll have a brief discussion of the fundamentals. So why and what of tax, right? Who is being taxed, and where the taxes should be paid. Again, since this is geared more towards the usual questions of non-resident Filipinos, we'll be focusing more on estate tax, which is the most common question, donors tax, and also on sale of property. Okay, for sale of property, we'll discuss some fundamentals on that because there are distinctions between the capital properties that are considered capital asset and versus ordinary. And then we'll be discussing sale of real property, again, a common concern of non-residents, and shares of stocks. Other assets, sometimes there are questions on that, but not so much. Okay, fundamentals. Okay, first the why and the what. Okay, what are the taxes under the National Internal Revenue Code? These are the taxes that are being collected by the BIR. Okay, so under the NIRC, you have income tax, VAT, percentage, estate donors, DST, and excise. Okay, we won't be discussing excise, which is a property tax on manufactured and imported goods. Might not be relevant for you to that much, no. Not so much also percentage tax, because it's a business tax on certain transactions, which may not be, again, relevant for non-residents. No? So we'll focus on estate donors and income tax only insofar as it involves sale of properties. Okay, not so much the businesses operating in the Philippines, the nitty-gritty of taxation of local businesses. Now, in relation to sale of property, we'll be discussing a bit VAT and DST also, because those are imposed on some types of transfers of properties. Okay, so those are the NRC taxes. In passing, when we talk about the transfer of properties or sale of properties, we'll also discuss a bit the other taxes that will be imposed, not necessarily by the BIR, but an example of that would be the local transfer tax, which is imposed by the local government. Okay. So who and where, the types of taxpayer. When we talk about where, right, it's not just where you need to pay and file your return. It also talks about situs, the situs of income, activity, or asset subject to Philippine taxes. Because depending on where the income, activity, or asset is located, you may or may not be subject to Philippine taxes. Okay. Okay, here's I guess this is the table, okay, a summary. For individuals, if you look at the income taxation part, which is do you see the arrow? Do you see the the cursor? I'll try to point.
Yes, attorney, we see it.
Okay. So on this row, in this situs of income tax, we're talking about income tax. If you notice, only the resident citizen is subject to worldwide income taxation. Okay, income tax from income from sources within and without the Philippines. Everyone else, even for citizens, if the citizen is non-resident, they're only taxed on income from sources within the Philippines. More so for aliens, no? Only from sources within the Philippines. So one of the usually asked questions, no? What if I'm already a non-resident Filipino citizen? Do I still have to pay taxes to the Philippine government for income that's derived from abroad? There are many reasons why, of course, a Filipino citizen may be abroad. No? Some are OFWs. They're just there for employment, permanent employment. Some are immigrants already. Although others, although not immigrants, are there on a long-term basis. So for those individuals, they're actually not subject to taxes on their income from abroad. Okay, only when you have, I guess, the residual transactions in the Philippines that we become subject to Philippine tax, but only on those transactions. Example of that would again be selling if you have an asset in the Philippines and you sell it, you sell your real property, then that would be subject to Philippine taxes. What about those citizens who are residents? They're subject to worldwide income taxation. So if they derive income from abroad, Philippines will also tax it. But the income will probably be taxed also by that jurisdiction. In the Philippines, there is the taxpayer has the option to either deduct or credit the taxes that the foreign taxes that were paid. There's a formula for that. It's basically in proportion to the worldwide income, right? But it's not totally double taxation because there are deductions and credit mechanisms that can be used. Okay, but of course, for the individuals who are not resident citizens, there's no crediting for income tax because you're not subject to tax on your offshore sources. Okay. If you're dual citizen, you are considered a citizen, right? Regardless of your other citizenship. Okay. The tax base would be different also, if depending on the classification, your tax type, right? If you are a resident citizen, a non-resident citizen, or a non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business in the Philippines. These are the individuals, the aliens, who do not stay in the Philippines for more than 180 in a calendar year. So if you're a former Filipino and you already acquired foreign citizenship and you did not opt for dual citizenship, and you don't go home to the Philippines that often, you don't stay long in the Philippines in any calendar year, then you are a non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business in the Philippines. If for whatever reason you have some businesses in the Philippines, you're taxed based on gross income, not taxable, not net income. It's a bit different if we're talking about estate tax. For estate tax, all citizens, regardless of residence, and aliens who are residents are taxed on worldwide estate. Okay, this is, I guess, where being a dual citizen would be a bit disadvantageous. Okay, non-resident aliens are only taxed on their estate located in the Philippines. No? So if you've already converted or changed citizenship, you fall under, and you're not a resident in the Philippines, you fall under non-resident aliens. Okay. Okay, for corporations, we won't dwell on this too much, but if you do have corporations, let's say you set up your businesses in the US, okay, your US company is not subject to Philippine taxation, even if it's 100% wholly owned by you, assuming you're a dual citizen or still a Filipino citizen only, right? It's not subject to Philippine taxation, even if 100% Filipino owned, except if it engages in or derives income from Philippine sources. Okay. Now, even if you are abroad and a non-resident Filipino, if you have a local company, meaning a company that's incorporated in the Philippines, it's taxed on its worldwide income. Okay. Again, there are deductions and crediting mechanisms for foreign taxes paid. Okay. Okay. Situs. For income, the situs of sale of real property is where it's located. So it would be relevant now what your tax type is, right? If you're selling property in the US and you are a non-resident Filipino, then it's not subject to Philippine taxation. If you're a resident Filipino, theoretically, it is subject to Philippine taxation, right? I mean, legally, it's subject to Philippine taxation, but it's a self-declaration because obviously the BIR won't have a means of knowing what you're selling in the US, right? So it's a self-declaration mechanism. Unlike if you're selling real property in the Philippines, you cannot transfer the title of that in the registry of deeds until you actually pay your taxes and secure a tax clearance from the BIR. Now, for tangible personal property, again, the situs of that is where the sale is made. Okay, that's the general rule, where the seller and the sale is made. But if it's sold in one place and it's made in one place and sold in another, then there may be some attribution or splitting of income, and Philippines may have a share in that income. For intangible personal properties, an example of this would be shares of stocks. That's taxable in the Philippines if it's a domestic, if the shares of a domestic corporation, regardless if you are or the shareholder is outside the Philippines. Okay, but for other types of intangibles, again, it's where it's located, where the intangible is registered, where the owner is located. Sale of service, if you're working abroad, the sale of service is taxable where it's rendered. So if you're a non-resident Filipino and you're doing business and you're rendering services abroad, your income from that is not subject to Philippine taxes. Now, for estate and donation, real property, the location is the situs, no? But again, if you are a citizen, regardless of resident or non-resident, you may be taxed on your worldwide estate, or if you're a non-resident alien, then only on property, real property in the Philippines. Okay. Again, shares of stocks of a Philippine corporation is always has a situs in the Philippines. No? The non-resident aliens may be able to get some exemption for that because under the tax code, there's a reciprocity provision. So if, let's say, the US doesn't tax or doesn't include in the estate the shares in a Philippine company, then the reciprocity provision may work for your benefit. So you have other assets as well. Depends on your status. Kung ikaw ay, if you're a resident if you're a Filipino citizen or resident alien, okay, whether or not you have to include it. Where do you pay taxes when there are taxes to be paid in the Philippines? The venue. No? So if you are talking about income tax in general for trade, business, or practice of profession, so for instance, you have you rendered some service here, for instance. So it's in the registered address of the taxpayer. But normally for the non-resident Filipino, it would be a sale on real property. That's a most common transaction. The venue for that is where the property is located, if you're selling real property, okay? If you're dealing with, oh, by the way, on income tax, if you're dealing with sale of shares, that's also where the taxpayer is registered. For non-residents, if you're selling shares of stock of a domestic corporation, not through the stock exchange, you have to file in RDO 39. The same also for estate tax. It's where the deceased was domiciled at the time of death. But for non-resident decedents, it's in RDO 39. That's actually in Quezon City, no? Somewhere in malapit sa, I'm not sure if you're familiar still with the Quezon City, malapit sa Delta and SM, between Delta and SM City, RDO 39. That's for estate tax, also for donor's tax. If a non-resident is donating, that's also the venue for filing and payment, okay? This venue is very important because if you're out of district, there's a penalty. Okay, there's a surcharge of 25% of the basic tax due if you file and or pay your taxes out of district. So that could be a huge amount if the basic tax is substantial. No? So really avoid filing or paying your taxes out of district. Okay. The other usual issue of non-residents, of course, is that they're not around to take care of the processing. If you're designating your representative, it's always important to have a special power of attorney for that representative who will be processing the tax payments and the clearances with the BIR. Unfortunately, for the documents executed abroad, it's not sufficient that it's notarized by the notary abroad, right? It has to be either apostilled if the country where you are is a party to the apostille convention. I think US is already. Or if not, then you still go to the consulate or the embassy to have it authenticated. No? That document that's signed, executed abroad, so that it will be acceptable to the BIR. Otherwise, if you happen to be in the Philippines and execute your SPA here, then you just need to have it notarized. If you are designating, however, an agent, a third party, not necessarily somebody who's just doing the processing exclusively for you, like your family member. If you're really dealing with an agent, make sure that you deal with an accredited tax agent, because the BIR can actually refuse to transact business with tax practitioners who are not accredited. Okay, but of course, because of Supreme Court rules, lawyers do not require accreditation from the BIR. They're automatically accredited. Well, considered allowed to practice. No? But for the other third parties, you just check if they are accredited tax agents. If you are just designating, your family or your friends who's not really a tax agent doing that for business, but rather just doing it exclusively for you, they don't need to be an accredited tax agent. Just give them a power of attorney. Okay. Okay, let's talk about the most common question, the estate tax. Well, no, in the old days, really, many years ago, there's estate tax and there's inheritance tax. But now we no longer have inheritance tax. We only have estate tax. The difference is that the inheritance tax is imposed on the heirs. Okay. So and the estate tax is on the estate of the deceased himself or herself, no? So that time you tax the estate, you tax the heirs fast. So no more taxing of the heirs. But the estate, under our laws, the properties cannot be distributed to the heirs until the taxes are paid. There's an exception to that. We'll discuss later. Until you get your tax clearance from the BIR, the titles of the properties, the stock certificates of shares cannot be transferred by the RD, by the Registry of Deeds or the corporate secretary of the company, or they shouldn't until you get the estate taxes have been paid and the clearance issued by the BIR. Okay. So the good news is, under the train law, effective January 1, 2018, the estate tax rate was lowered to 6%. It's a flat rate now. No more graduated rate, the highest of which was 20%. No, this was the reason why a lot of estates actually got stuck. It wasn't a lot of the estates were never settled. Some properties are still in the names of our grandfathers, grandparents, great grandmothers, and our grandparents, right? Because of the high taxes, and the heirs just got it discouraged the heirs from settling the estate. And it also resulted in a lot of fraudulent transactions. People were avoiding the 20% tax rate. So what a lot of people did was to simulate sale. Let's say the property of the grandparents or the parents were composed of real property. Instead of settling the estate, a lot of people were just, simulating sale prior to death, which is actually a fraudulent transaction, because they wanted to avail of the 6% capital gains tax. Right? So I guess to avoid that, and to also to encourage people to just settle the estates, everything's a flat rate of 6%. Okay. But this is only effective January 1, 2018, which means if the person died prior to that, it's actually subject to the old rate, because the rule in estate tax is that the law and the valuation effective as of time of death prevails, regardless of subsequent change in law or subsequent change in valuation, right? So it's the value and the tax rate and the deductions that were applicable at the time of death. Later, we'll discuss the remedies of the heirs now, who, if the deceased passed away before January 1, 2018. Okay. But under also the Train Law, there's been a substantial change in the deductions to the estate. So there's the standard deduction has been increased from just 1 million pesos to 5 million. And the family home deduction now is 10 million pesos. No longer the very small deduction of 1 million. But they took out the expenses for funeral and medical deductions. I guess one of the reasons here is that this one is a cause for dispute. It's always because of course the executors would claim this as an expense, and then the BIR would always look for the substantiation. So it's always a point of dispute, and when there's a point for dispute, there's a chance for corruption. The other deductions from gross estate were retained, so you can still claim a deduction for claims against the estate, against insolvent person, banishing the other deductions were retained. Actually, it's a long list of deductions, but I don't want to flood you, too much information. How about, okay, this, just take note though that this deduction, this 5 million and a family home of 10 million only applies to, what you call this? The standard deduction only applies to citizens and residents, decedents. Okay, so if you're dual citizen, if the deceased was dual citizen, this will be all. However, if even if the deceased was a former Filipino, converted or changed citizenship, then opt for dual citizenship, the deduction is a bit different. Okay, the standard deduction is only 500,000. Of course, being a non-resident, you can't claim family home deduction, because the family home assumes that that's the residence of the deceased. So if the deceased is non-resident, there's no family home deduction. Okay. Some other changes to the estate tax aside from the rate and the deductions. For gross estates, unless the gross estate exceeds 5 million, you no longer have to submit a CPA certification. You might ask, the standard deduction is 5 million, right? And the family home deduction is 10 million. So if your gross estate doesn't exceed 5 million, so why even file, right? Why file? Because you're exempt. But the thing is, even if you're exempt, if the estate is exempt, if there are assets there, you need to file your estate tax return because you need to get your tax clearance, right? In order to transfer the titles to the heirs. Okay, so we've actually made several filings already where the tax payable is just zero. It's zero. Pwede kasing ano lang, zero basic tax, but it's a late payment, so you just pay for the late payment, or it's very minimal because of the deductions, no? But still, you have to go through the process to get the titles transferred because you need clearance. Okay. The other update is that previously, before train, the deadline is 6 months to file and pay. But with train, it's been extended. You have 1 year from date of death. Okay. That's a filing. Generally, you have to pay your taxes at the point of filing, but the administrator or executor can ask for an extension or pay by installment over a period of 2 years if there's a bit of a liquidity issue. And also a significant change to the estate tax is that the executor or administrator or the heirs may now withdraw from the bank deposit of the account holder or the deceased, subject to the bank withholding a final 6% withholding tax. Previously, this is a usual problem for the estate. The deceased has cash in the bank and other assets, but the heirs can't get it because everything's frozen. You can't take the cash out. You can only take a very small amount, and you have to get permission from the Commissioner of Internal Revenue. So the cash is stuck in the bank, and then resulting in the heirs not having any money to actually pay the taxes. So they'll have to borrow, or they'll have to advance it themselves to get this estate settled. So this has been addressed by this provision that allows the heirs to withdraw the cash from the bank. The downside, though, is that if you withdraw prior to the clearance, prior to the settlement of the estate tax, the bank will withhold a 6% tax, which is equivalent to the tax rate, right? But this time it's a 6% final withholding. What happens is that the deposit now, you don't have to include that in the gross estate because the tax has been paid. It may be disadvantageous if you consider the gross estate without having that 6%, if you just include the cash in the total and then compute the estate with all the deductions, baka there's actually no tax payable, right? Because if you have a standard deduction of 5M plus 10 million family home deduction, just on the 5M, it could be that your computation results in 0 estate tax payable, or an estate tax payable that's actually less than 6%, right, of the gross. So, but I guess that's the price to pay for, an express withdrawal of your bank deposit. But even the banks, though, of course, they're careful. So before they even let you withdraw, usually they ask you to submit your extrajudicial settlement or order, because they don't want to issue or release the bank deposit force to just anyone, right? Might be fraudulent release. Okay, so here's the circular of the BIR. Allowing for the withdrawal of the bank deposit, although that provision is in the tax code itself. Okay, so provided there's a 6% final withholding tax. Okay. Okay. As we mentioned, under train, the rate now is 6% only, no longer the range of 0 to 20%, but that's only effective January 1, 2018, because again, for estate tax, the rate, the law applicable and the valuation is only at the point of death. So only those who passed away January 1, 2018 and onwards. So what if your deceased relative passed away prior to that? The rate would be 20%, and also aside from the tax base, it's the basic tax itself, you're already late. So there's also a penalty, right? A penalty which includes surcharge of 25% if it's not willful. There's interest. Prior to train, it was 20% per annum. After train, it's 12. So it runs 20% until 2017. Tapos, after that, it's 12%. Okay, so it's quite substantial. What you can do, you still have time to avail of the estate tax amnesty. Actually, the first law providing for that amnesty in 2019, actually it expired. But there was a new law, and it extended the deadline for availing of that tax amnesty on estate to June 2023. So you still have a bit of time. But if you intend to avail of amnesty, you really have to get started, because it's not an easy, it's not a fast process. You can just imagine dealing with a BIR. And there's quite a bit of documents that you need to collate, okay? What's great about the amnesty is that it allows you to avail or to settle the estate still at 6%. So instead of the 0 to 26% na lang, and you don't have to pay the penalties anymore. It's really just a flat 6%. And it's 6% based on the value of the property at the time of death. So it could really just be a very small amount, no? Kasi, the valuation is at time of death, but the rate is 6%. So it's actually a good deal if you can avail of this, no? But again, it's not an easy process, because you have to collate a lot of documents. You have to get the death certificate of the deceased. It's certified. Usually it's the PCP, Philippine Statistics Office copy that's required. But if the deceased passed away abroad, then it's the authenticated or apostilled copy, certified copy abroad. The administrator will have to file or apply for tax identification number for the estate. It's not that difficult, but your representative executor administrator just has to get your SPAs. No? There are forms. Later I'll show you the forms. Okay. This is usually these items here: affidavit of self-adjudication, extrajudicial settlement, or court decision. Right. This I guess among all documents, this is, I guess, the most difficult. Because, well, if it's just one family, it's easier, but what we find is that, especially for properties that are, properties of grandparents, so now you're talking about, several branches of the family coming together and executing the extrajudicial settlement. There's the usual question is, what if one of the siblings or the siblings, some of the siblings died, and what if some of the cousins aren't willing to, are making trouble, or are not agreeable to the settlement, or can't even be located, right? Or can be located, doesn't want to sign, you're just not interested. You can't have an extrajudicial settlement. Usually that goes to court as a settlement of estate, which is of course a bit more. It's a lengthier process. If the extrajudicial settlement is executed by some of the parties abroad, again, you have to go through the extrajudicial and the apostillization and authentication process. It's December. It's a reunion time for most of families. Maybe that's something that you can make part of your agenda for your reunion. You still have time. You have 6 months to to, to avail of it. Of course, important are the proof of the documents pertaining to the property. And I guess aside from the extrajudicial settlement, this is also the the tedious part, the documents proving relationship of heirs, because you need to get all the marriage certificates, birth certificates of the people that are listed in the extrajudicial settlement. Okay. And lastly, you need to get an SPA for your tax agent, right? If the person processing the amnesty is not the executor or administrator indicated in the EJS, in the extrajudicial settlement, it's someone else, then that executor or administrator has to issue an SPA for the tax agent or the representative. Okay. Okay. So when you're applying for estate tax amnesty, so you'll have to file your estate tax amnesty return together with the acceptance payment form. But the thing is, before the BIR, if you noticed here, there's a revenue officer endorsement, right? Which means that the amount here, you'll have to present to the BIR all your documents, which we discussed in the earlier slide, and the computation, right? If they agree to the computation, it's correct, then they'll give this endorsement. And this payment, together with the estate tax amnesty form, will be paid in the authorized agent bank. So again, it's a bit a lengthy process, because aside from collating, of course, you present it to the BIR, they'll inspect it a bit and see if everything's in order and the computation is in order. When that's done, then that's the time that they give the endorsement. So best not to do it last minute, okay? Because sometimes the BIR says, okay, this part here is wrong, it's missing, okay? So you need some time to complete it. Once you've availed of it, you get your certificate of availment of the estate tax amnesty. But aside from this certificate, you also get your tax clearance certificate, which actually lists the properties that you provided in the estate tax, in the EJS and the estate tax return, which would be now your basis to go to Register of Deeds, to the corporate secretary, so that you can transfer the titles. Okay. Okay, let's talk about donor's tax. This is also a common question, because some non-residents have left properties in the Philippines, or they have co-owned properties, usually with siblings, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. They just want to give it. So you can actually donate properties. Okay. Again, the good news is that under train, it's no longer the graduated rate. The highest rate before was 15%. Tapos if you're donating to what was defined as strangers or the people who are not relatives within the 4th degree of consanguinity, if they're considered strangers, the donor's tax could be as much as 30%, no? But now, regardless of who you're donating to, it's just a 6% donor's tax. Okay, great. So the donor's tax does not apply to the first 250,000 donation for the taxable year. Okay. All right. So just take note, though. There's also donor's tax applicable if you're selling property for less than fair market value. The exceptions there, if you're selling real property, that's capital assets. Let's say you're selling your house. You're selling your house. If it's a related party transaction, you're selling to your sibling. I mean, a bona fide sale, pero at a discounted amount, right? Because of course you're related. If it's less than fair market value, you don't need to pay donor's tax, because the capital gains tax on that anyway will be based on the higher of fair market value or selling price. Okay. But otherwise, there's a donor's tax. Just take note, especially so when you're dealing with shares of stocks. Okay, if you're selling it for less than fair market value. And also in relation to estate tax, again, a common question. No? What if you're repudiating your inheritance? Let's say, since you're already abroad, you don't really want to take part in the properties left by, let's say, your parents, and you just want your siblings to have it. If it's a general repudiation of inheritance, that means you never inherited. If you never inherited, then it's just your siblings now who inherited. There's no donation there because you're not giving anything. You don't give anything that you didn't receive, right? So you were never an heir because you didn't accept your inheritance. So the estate is settled. It goes directly to your siblings. You don't get anything because you repudiated. No donor's tax. What if you waived your interest in favor of a co-heir, right? You said, okay, because let's say you're 3 siblings. Okay, my share I'll just give to B, to my one sibling, right? Instead of saying, oh, no, I'm not inheriting anything. I don't want to inherit. Instead of saying that, you say, okay, my part in the inheritance I'm giving to this sibling, okay? It's as if you accepted your inheritance. In order to have the power to actually say, I'm giving my share to this sibling, you're deemed to have accepted your inheritance and given it. So aside from the estate tax of your parents, you also have to pay donor's tax on your portion of the inheritance that you're waiving in favor of your co-heirs, okay? Partial renunciation also works that's the same way. Partial renunciation would mean, because the estate is valued, right? There's a value to the estate. But let's say it's made up of several properties. Let's say you are 3 siblings. Ito siya. I think there's here. Let's say you are there's 3 siblings. You have a total value. And then there are 3 properties actually. And then you, instead of saying we're sharing that equally, those 3 properties, you say, okay, this property A is mine, property B is yours, property C is, our other siblings. If the valuations are different, then the differences in the valuation, whoever got less than the 1/3 of the value actually has to pay donor's tax. That's what's meant by partial renunciation, okay? This is actually a new rule by the BIR. Previously, if you just do your extrajudicial and you just say, okay, I'll take this property, you take that property, it's as if you just accepted your donation for that part, no donor's tax. But then here's a regulation in 2021 that says you sort of see how much the value you're getting, okay? If it's less than what you're supposed to get, you have to pay donor's tax. So nabawasan na yung natanggap mo, you got less than what you're supposed to inherit because you gave it to your siblings, you have to pay donor's tax pa. So anyway, that's the RMC 94 2021. Okay, here's a bit of so it's now Heir Z here. If you look at this, Heir Z, because of how they divided the estate, actually got less than what he's supposed to get, so he has to pay donor's tax. Okay. Go to sale of properties. Again, usual transaction for non-residents. You have properties left in the Philippines, okay? So usual yan, real properties and shares of stocks. I think especially for real properties, no? You need to make a distinction whether that property is a capital asset or an ordinary asset. What's the difference? So you have, if the property is a stock in trade or part of the inventory for sale, primarily held for sale to customers, or it's used in trade or business, that's subject to depreciation, or real property used in trade or business of the taxpayer, it's considered an ordinary asset. Otherwise, it's capital asset. So what would be what's the usual scenario here? Properties left in the Philippines that are being leased. Kasi since the non-resident Filipino already left for abroad and there are real properties left in the Philippines, it's being rented out. Okay, if it's being rented out, then that is considered a real property used in trade or business, because renting, leasing is a business. Even it may not be that significant, even if it's just a small property, that the act of leasing is a business. Okay, so the leased property can be considered an ordinary asset, not a capital asset. Okay, if it's being leased. So what's the difference? If it's a capital asset, it's subject to capital gains. But if it's ordinary asset, it's part of the regular income of the taxpayer, which could spell a lot of difference. Okay, if you're selling real property, subject siya sa here. If you're selling real property that's held as a capital asset, let's say your old house, right? It's a capital asset because it's not being used for business. So you're just paying a final capital gains tax of 6% based on the market value or the selling price, whichever is higher, plus DST of 15 for every 1,000. Okay. Also, if you're selling that house, but this doesn't apply to non-resident, kasi it has to be the principal residence. For those in the Philippines, they can get exemption from sale of principal residence if they'll use the proceeds to purchase another house or another residence. Okay, but of course, for non-residents, this doesn't apply. So 6% lang. Okay. But what if it's a real property that's considered an ordinary asset? It's considered ordinary income. What does it mean? Subject to the regular rate. You have to pay the CWT, the creditable withholding tax of 6%. Pero at the end of the taxable period, the gross amount will form part of income tax, which means it's subject to the scheduler rate, the highest of which is 35%. You also have to pay 15%, and I guess always the point of contention here with the BIR at the point that you're getting your clearance, they may also impose a VAT on the sale. So it's a huge, there's a huge difference in your liability if you're selling capital asset versus ordinary. Okay, so what's the remedy? You can actually convert a real property from capital to ordinary, ordinary to capital. Even if you rented it before, especially if you're just an individual, not engaged in real estate business. Even if you rented it before, if it became idle for up to 2 years, then it gets converted back to capital asset. Okay. So again, if it's ordinary, you have to pay CWT, right, at the upfront. But at the end of the period, you also have to include that and pay the income tax. Sale of ordinary asset may also be subject to VAT, right? So 12% VAT. So if it's being leased, ito siya. Real properties, ito siya yung exemption. So real properties not primarily held for sale or lease in the ordinary course of business will not be subject to VAT, which means if your property is held for lease, then it will be subject to VAT. Tax base, fair market value, as determined by the commissioner, the zonal value. Fair market value as shown in the tax deck or the selling price, whichever is higher. Okay. Due dates. You have to pay it within 30 days if it's capital gains. 10th day of the month following the sale if it's withholding tax. The DST is in the 5th day of the month following. So may deadlines yan. Again, if you don't pay your taxes within the deadline, then there are penalties, surcharge, interest, compromise penalties. So always be mindful, I guess, of the deadlines, no? Sale of shares. That's also quite common for those non-residents. I guess what's important to note here is that usually it's always capital asset if you're selling shares, because only dealers and securities are considered as holding shares of stock as ordinary assets. So it's always a capital asset in most people's hands. Okay. So the tax base is the selling price less the acquisition cost. Okay, so that's the gain, the excess of consideration over cost. That's your gain. The rate is 15%. Okay, flat na ngayon. Dati kasi you still have your 5 and 10%, but they increased it to 15 flat rate. Okay. So what's consideration? That's the selling price. Of course, if there are exchanges, it's a bit more complicated to compute the, what the consideration is, right? So if it's part money, part kind, so you have to take into account the fair market value of the property received, yung mga ganon. So it's simpler to just sell it for cash. Fair market value is important to take note of. If it's listed, then it's the listed price. If it's not listed, it's the book value as of latest audited financial statements. As I mentioned, if you're selling a property below market value, if the selling price is less than market value, the difference you have to pay owner's tax. Okay, but actually, the owner's tax is only 6%, right? And the capital gains tax on sale of shares is 15%. So if you sell it for less than market, especially if the market is a lot more than your acquisition cost, perhaps it's even better for you to just sell. If you're really selling it below market, then it just pay the owner's tax, which is 6%. Unlisted, let's not go into the detail. I won't go into this detail. Tax rate is 15% if it's over the counter, not through the exchange. But if you have a broker and you're actually buying and selling shares through the exchange, you don't have to pay capital gains. Okay, they take care of it. It's a stock transaction tax that's usually taken care of and withheld by the broker. It's 6/10 of 1%. Okay. Deadline for CGT is 30 days from the end of each transaction. Under the tax code, there's supposed to be a final consolidated return, but nobody seems to be filing this consolidated return for sale of shares, and the BRRs doesn't seem to mind. But under the tax code, there should be a consolidated return. Okay. The venue is where the RDO, where the seller is registered. Again, for non-residents, it's in RDO 39. Okay. If you're selling other assets, again, if you're a resident Filipino, legally you're supposed to, and it's abroad, right? Abroad, you're supposed to declare it. It's self-declaration. If you're selling it in the Philippines, if it's a Philippine asset, so even if you're non-resident, again, it's a self-declaration because you're not only shares, shares of stock lang sa real property, only those are the items or the properties that require clearance from the BIR, tax clearance. Other assets, like if you're selling jewelry, even cars, LTO doesn't require tax clearance. So it's a self-declaration, okay? Okay, I think that's it. Q&A. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Napaka-interesting, lalo na yung estate taxes. Thank you, Attorney Togs. Sumagot si ISP. ISP is Imaginative Super President. So that means he's president now of a Rotary Club, also in the district. ISP Melvir, sabi niya, RDO 39 daw ay nasa Coher Center Building, Quezon Avenue, Quezon City. Yun. Thank you very much. Now we're opening the floor for questions and answers. Yung iba, kung nahihiya kayo, if you'd rather type in your questions sa ating chat box, that's most welcome. And if you also wish to ask a question, I might not be able to see hands being raised. Di ba? Pwede yung gawin sa Zoom. Kasi marami rin tayong participants, baka hindi ko mapansin. Kaya baka pwedeng yung type if you want to be recognized. Anyone?
You ask a
Attorney
question.
Togs? Ayun, si Noel.
Yeah.
Rotarian Noel is, where are you? Okay, again, he's based in New York. He's a certified public accountant there in the Philippines. Go ahead, Noel.
Yeah, good morning. You mentioned about ordinary assets, and you said that the ordinary asset is also subject to a 6% upfront, and then at the end, of the year, they also include it as their ordinary income, subject to graduated income tax if it's individual, or if subject to how much, about 35% if it's corporation. My question is, when you pay the 6%, is it becomes a withholding tax
Yes, it's
deductible?
a creditable withholding tax. It's deductible from the income tax at the end of the period. If it's ordinary asset, real property, we're only talking about real property, 6% CWT,
Yes.
tapos creditable siya against your regular income tax. But we're talking here about citizens. Okay, so kung non-resident, ano yun? Non-resident aliens not engaged in trade or business, strictly speaking, 25% ang tax mo. Pero we've had experiences with BIR na pag nag-deal ka sa real property, they just do a 6%. They seem to be, I guess, oblivious of the 25%.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Noel. There is a message from Mary Angeline Ong. Very informative. Can we request for the materials to be sent to our email? We're actually on FB Live, Systogs, Attorney Viray. Anyone?
Yeah.
Before we continue our Q&A, let me also remind everyone, I had mentioned this at the start, baka yung iba wala pa, as a way of saying thank you to everyone for joining us on Sunday morning, or in the case of those in America, Saturday evening. Meron kaming konting raffle. So for those in the Philippines, could you kindly type in your full name and your GCash? Papadala po namin sa GCash. Ihahanda na ng aming very efficient club secretary ang raffle, ano ba yung tawag doon? Ruleta. So thank you very much, Noel, for your question.
I have another
meron pa
question
daw,
again.
pahabol.
Oh, Mel, I have another question, because when you say dual citizen, you also said you become a non-resident alien, and you're
No.
non-resident residents. Yeah, you become a non-resident citizen, so your income is also subject to tax in the Philippines. And you also mentioned about service, right? Service, is it, are you talking about service as a business, or if you're just being employed in a company here in outside the Philippines, but you are a dual citizen, is it subject to income tax?
Just to clarify, dual citizenship means that you're still, at least for tax purposes, you're Filipino. It doesn't matter to the Philippines whether you have additional citizenship. That makes you a citizen, right? Citizen ka, versus an alien. So the Filipinos who opted to change citizenship and then retain the dual citizenship means they're already aliens. Now the residency is another level of classification. So if you're dual, doesn't necessarily mean that you are resident or non-resident. You have to check now on the factual situation, right? You could actually be a dual citizen, but a resident in the Philippines. So if you opted for dual citizenship and are now staying in the Philippines, you're actually a resident resident citizen. If you're dual, but you're in the US, then you are a non-resident citizen. Okay. Now you're asking now about service. Service means both. Basta it's service, whether you're doing it in your as a freelancer, for instance. Let's say you have a business in your own name, not a corporation, but rather a single proprietorship. It's really in your name. You're perform, and the business is performing service as a business, or you're employed. Right? Now, if you are a non-resident Filipino, right, dual ka, but you are residing in the U.S., your income from your service, which is rendered in the U.S., will not be subject to Philippine tax. But let's say for whatever reason, dual ka, you're living in the Philippines, and sometimes you're doing some, some side gig in US, Singapore. So legally, that forms part of your income in the Philippines. That's taxable in the Philippines. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Noel. May I read a comment from Delia Barcelona? Del, sabi niya, thanks, Professor Viray, for your very informative presentation. Does BIR have a step-by-step process for filing any of these taxes? There seems there seems to be a perception that it is so complicated to deal with BIR, especially when it comes to estate taxation.
They did issue in the presentation, which I'll send. There's a link there on the particular regulation for the amnesty. Actually, that particular regulation, may mga annexes siya. And one of the annexes is the guide. There's a guide on how to avail of the amnesty. There's also a comprehensive list of documents that will have to be submitted to the BIR and the forms. So at least for the amnesty, there's that. Right? For the others, well, there are regulations also, but I guess it's more straightforward if you're selling property or donating, right? It's a simpler process. The documentary requirements are also, fewer than the amnesty. When I send you the slides, just take note of the links there. Actually, you can look for it in the website of BIR, www.bir.gov.ph, and you can actually type in amnesty. Malamang lalabas yun. There are references also in the slides that you can use to help in your search.
Thank you na masasend mo yung slides, and then if okay, I think it's okay with you, we'll send it to the participants. We've taken note of your names, nakikita namin, but if you want the slides, pakibigay ang inyong email address. Paki-type in din. And I also saying thank you for those who are typing their names and their GCash numbers. Kung wala po GCash, mahirap magpadala ng premyo. Are there any questions from
Yes.
our participants?
Yes, I have another question. Last questions.
Sige Noel, go ahead. I'm sure
Okay,
baka
yeah.
yan din yung tanong ng iba.
Okay. My last question, I hope this is the last question, regarding the donor's tax, because you said that the donor's tax is subject to 6% for the donor. If you're the donee who receiving receiving the donations, is it also subject to income tax on your part?
No,
O
no
hindi
more.
na?
Hindi na. In fact, hindi ka rin as a donee, there's some jurisprudence that says, as a donee, the BIR can't run after you for the donor's tax. It's really the donor who is subject to donor's tax. Of course, if you're dealing with real property or shares of stock, hindi mo, the titles can't be transferred until the donor's taxes are paid. So you probably end up paying it. But at least no income tax. That's not part of your income if it's a donation.
Is that part of the but let's say you're donating money and it's more than which is a substantial amount, and you're only paying the donor's tax. So the recipient, you don't you said it's not taxable, but you
Yes.
don't declare it because you don't declare it as a non-taxable income because
No.
it might assess you based on net net value or by the BRR next.
The donor has the obligation to file and pay. Now, the recipient has no obligation to include that in their income tax return. In fact, although unless you're being targeted politically, even if they do a lifestyle check on you, right, and look at your net asset, if they see that amount, you can actually show the donor's tax as a justification because that's not income on the part of the recipient. I guess it's a different matter if it's a SALN, right? Whatever it is, however it is that you received it, you have to declare it. But for income tax, amounts you receive as donation is not part of your income.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, Noel. Any other questions? Meron. Teka lang ha. This is from Divina. She's in California. Thank you very much, attorney, sabi niya. Can a US citizen own a condominium? Nawawala. In the Philippines? Yes. Ano ba to? If yes, how? Nakikita mo ba ito? Hindi ko makita. If yes, how will the property tax be paid?
Wait,
US citizen daw.
The US citizen, and I'm assuming only, not dual, right?
Seems like it. Yeah.
The short answer is yes, with condition. You have to check with the condominium association or condominium corporation that they have not yet reached the 40% foreign ownership of units, because a condo can be owned by foreigners to the extent of 40%. So you have to check that. How? Well, you can buy it. As long as there are still units available for purchase by foreigners and the condo corp will not breach the foreign ownership requirement. You can buy it or it can be donated to you.
Thank you so much, attorney. Okay, so meaning 40%. If it say for example the whole building has been bought by all US citizens because they are marketing heavily in the US, right? So how about the property tax? How can we pay or are we going to pay property tax? We are not dual citizen. We are just US citizen. Thank you.
From the developer is prohibited. The condo is prohibiting the whole building to foreigners. Perhaps they can sell a part of that to Filipinos residing abroad. I know they're marketing, a lot of real property companies are marketing heavily abroad, and their target market are Filipinos, right? But they have to maintain the 60-40 ownership. Okay. Now, real property taxation has to be, by the way, estate tax is different from real estate tax. Okay, estate tax is the tax you pay upon death of the deceased, right? That the estate pays upon the death of the deceased. What's usually referred to as real estate tax, or the other word is real property tax under the local government code. It's a tax on the property, right? amilyar ba?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
And regardless of your citizenship or residence of the owner, the amilyar will have to be paid. You have the property tax has to be paid. Who's liable for it? The registered owner.
Okay, got you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Divina. I think Attorney Togs can still take in a few questions. Let me see what's in our chat box, if there's any. Ito na naman. Can we request for the materials to be sent? Meron na ng mga email addresses. Okay. We have been getting a lot of thank yous, Attorney Togs.
Welcome, and thank you also, this, sorry. for the
Attorney, this is Divina again, PP Dory.
Go
It
ahead.
seems that, yeah, I mean, with regards to taxations, it is not straightforward as my personal opinion, right? How can, what is your suggestion to seek, I mean, a professional advice or agent from your side, or do it I mean, on my personal side? Which one is beneficial for the I mean to deal with the BIR or taxes in the Philippines?
Well, it really depends on your transaction. No? If it's a simple transaction, like you're just buying real property, or rather selling real property, that's, let's say your house, maybe you can do it on your own. Pero and also it depends on your level of, I guess, familiarity. The difficulty there is if you're not familiar with for one, the computations, the deadlines, the venue, baka you might end up, being penalized, which would, it's not really to your benefit. But if you're familiar with some of those and it's a simple transaction that you can actually research online, you can do it on your own. But otherwise, if you have doubts on that, just look for a tax agent and get a tax agent.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, I don't know if this was already answered, Attorney Togs. What will be the effect to the Filipino buyer who buys a foreigner-owned condo unit under the 40%? Nasagot mo na ba to?
So it's owned by a foreigner, and then purchased by a Filipino.
Teka. This is from Mary Angeline Ong. Would you like to restate the question? Gusto mong itanong? I mean, through here, tanungin mo diretso? Are you still here, Mary
Hi, Mary
Angeline?
Angeline. Please turn on your mic for the question.
Mary Angeline? Lipat muna ako sa ibang question. My mom, this from Susan Sevilla, she's also from the Philippines. My mom, who is now gone, wished to transfer directly ownership of her property to my children, her apos. I have no problem with this. Is this possible, and what are the steps?
Sorry, what do you mean mom is now gone?
Pumanaw na.
And there's a mention of the mom wanting to transfer directly to the kids. How was this wish documented?
Susan? Susan? Was it documented daw? Meron bang kasulatan Meron bang will ang mami mo, si mami? Wala raw. None. So verbal lang ba, Susan? Susan? Minsan verbal, yeah. So,
Are there other,
Attorney Viray.
because your mom is she was your mom, right? So do you have siblings?
She's the única hija.
Una-
Only child.
Ah, okay. Well, then you'll have to do your affidavit of sole adjudication. Dadaan sa'yo. Well, you could actually wait. You could waive. You could waive your waive your make sure lang that you're the only heir. Because if you waive your inheritance, it goes to the next level. Just waive your inheritance. And have your kids extrajudicially have an extrajudicial and waive your inheritance.
Nag-type in si Mary Angeline. Siya yung may tanong sa foreign owned. Sabi niya, correct po. Ano yung
Ano yun?
correct? Ano yung
Correct.
Bali, habang hintay natin mag-type in ulit si Mary Angeline. Ang tinatanong ni Susan naman now, 6% ba daw transfer tax?
Of what? Which one?
Ng ano raw, Susan? Hintay natin. Baka nagkakaproblema sila to speak. Kaya nagta-type in.
Hello. Dory, can you hear me?
Susan, is that you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is
Go ahead.
Susan. Yeah. What are the taxes to be paid if I have to waive?
Sorry? Waive your inheritance?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, you're just settling your mom's estate. So it's the 6% estate tax.
Yeah. Because I read earlier in one of your notes, there is what's this? The repudiation? Something like that.
Yeah.
What would this
If
case be?
if it's a complete repudiation of the inheritance, then there's no donor's tax.
Okay.
If you're taking some other properties, then it's a partial repudiation. You'll have to compute the donor's tax on top of the estate.
Okay. So I just have to make a waive of my inheritance. Is that all? And then the title can be transferred directly to the children when I arrange them with the RDA.
Yes, in the settlement of the estate, indicate that you're fully repudiating your inheritance. So it goes to the next in line.
Okay. I have another question. We have this farmland. Which is owned by my mom and her siblings. They are 7 in the family and only 2 are surviving. And it is under the under the title, it is under the SPA of my uncle who has already passed away too. How do we go about the transfer of title?
Sorry, what do you mean by SPA? In the title?
I just read in the title na nakasulat doon, and para under the administration or SP of my uncle in behalf of her siblings.
It's just administration. The property is still owned by the siblings.
Yes. Yung title nasa pangalan pa ng magkakapatid, tapos under the administration of the brother of one sibling.
Yeah, that's it's still the siblings, the surviving siblings, and the heirs of the deceased siblings who will have to execute the extrajudicial settlement.
Oh, I see.
Administration is just, it's just management. It doesn't make him the owner or the one who can simply transfer the property.
So
Thank you,
in this
Susan.
case,
Yeah.
would it be better to just sell the property? Something like that na lang. Kasi no, ano,
You can sell the property, but it doesn't really exempt you from having to settle. Because again, you can't transfer the property, and the RD won't transfer the property until
yeah,
the
that's it. Oo.
So isa-settle mo pa rin talaga. I guess if you're
Ah.
selling it, then the buyer can undertake the process and maybe defer the cost.
Yung mga steps nito is ganun din, ang mga presentation of the death certificates and so on. Is
Yes,
that it?
that's right.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Balikan ko yung question ni Mary Angeline Ong. Yes, if a Filipino bought the foreign-owned unit, will the Filipino be restricted by the 40%? He can sell it later only to foreigner in the future? Yun ang tanong niya.
I mean, if it's Filipino, then the better for the condo, right? Because that reduces the foreign ownership. Now that he owns it as a Filipino, we can sell it to a foreigner again, assuming that at that point that he's selling, it doesn't reach the foreign ownership yet. Right. So always at the foreign ownership limit must always be maintained. It's actually good that he's buying it because more Filipinos are better, right? I mean that doesn't reach the 60%. Pero yun, when it's time again to sell, yeah, they have to check at that point.
Can you take one last question? Baka meron pang isa. Just one last question from anyone, a short one.
Question, ma'am.
Sure.
Apo. Question po kay ma'am. With regards po sa sale of the property, ilang percent po usually ang binabayaran ng buyer?
Buyer.
Yes.
Well, the market, we're talking about real property here, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, the market is that the DST is for the buyer and the real property, the transfer,
Capital. Yes.
the local transfer tax, the DST and the registration fee with the RD is borne by the buyer, usually, huh? Although under the law, yung DST, any party yan eh. So they're actually free to agree buyer to shoulder DST, local transfer, RD fees. But the capital gains, if it's a capital asset, that's an income tax of the seller eh. So dapat siya the seller should shoulder that. If the buyer agrees to shoulder it, it actually increases the price, meaning 6% gains, the buyer agreed to shoulder it. That means the price that you're giving the seller is 94% only, right? Kasi it's usual for the buyer. Aside from the price that you're giving to the seller, you're actually shouldering the 6%. That means that will have to be closed up if the BIR finds out that you're shouldering the capital. So yun. That's the taxes that needs to be paid. And yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for the info.
So thank you very much, Attorney Virginia Viray. Sobrang nakakatuwa to have a senior, not only a senior partner, but tax, really a professor to be with us this morning, again in the Philippines and evening here in the United States. We would like to say, babasahin ko ang sabi ni ISP Melvir. Sabi niya, thank you, Professor Attorney Virginia Viray. I learned a lot today. Oy, thank you. Congratulations, RC Kagitingan Cubao, for yet another successful webinar project. Thank you rin, ISP Melvir, for always supporting us.
Thank you. And also, thank you for the invitation. And I'm glad I had a chance to be with you today with the Rotary. Thank you.
Attorney Togs, Attorney Viray, meron kaming online certificate to be presented to you, a recognition by our chair of the Satellite Club of Kagitingan Cubao Online, Rotarian Doris Vanasdale. Doris?
Yeah. Where is it? We would like to present in behalf of the Rotary Club of Kagitingan Cubao and in partnership with the Satellite Club, we would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Attorney Virginia Viray, CPA, Head Tax Practice Group and Co-Head M&A PJS Law, in grateful recognition and commendation for her valuable effort and exemplary performance as resource speaker on updates of tax laws in the Philippines. Given this 20th day of November 2022 at RC Kagitingan's Cubao's webinar. Signed, Doris Vanasdale and President Alvin Mangona, RC Kagitingan Cubao. Thank you, Attorney Viray.
Thank you.
I personally would be looking forward to meeting you in the Philippines when I conduct some business there that will surely entail a lot of taxation concerns.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. Looking forward to meeting you also in person.
Now, for the closing remarks, may we now call on our partner club, from the Rotary Club of Maharlika Modesto. They are based in California. May I call on Divina Paxial. P. Divine? Auditor Divine?
Hello. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Right. And I for the closing remark, right? Thank you so much, Attorney Virginia Viray, for informative presentation about the taxes. Just like what everybody said, we learned a lot from you. And yeah, this is something like really needed for everyone, especially our kababayan here in the US and in the Philippines. And yeah, we couldn't thank you enough for sharing your time, sharing your expertise, and we are very proud of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
EP.
Thank you once again. For our participants, we will have a raffle. Ano ba ang nasa raffle natin? Let me look at my... Nakalagay dyan, presence is required. Secretary Ice, can you tell us, can you show to us kung ano yung mga paraffle natin? Yan, para sa mga nasa Pilipinas, we will have 4 winners at 500 pesos each. And ano pa yung iba natin? Meron tayong 2 winners sa nasa labas ng Pilipinas, 20 US dollars. Mali. 20 US dollars. At meron din tayong 2 packs of cookies worth $40 each dito sa Amerika. Ipapadala ng ating chair, Doris Vanasdale, sa inyo pagka kayo'y nanalo, as long as we have your mailing address. And meron din tayong, parang meron tayo Ice na 1,000 pesos. 2 ba yun? Nawala ko yung listahan ko. Tama ba?
Apo, 2 na winner for 1,000 pesos.
Okay. So, kasali ang mga participants ngayon, maliban sa mga nasa satellite club at saka ang vice president na ang ating president-elect at president. Hindi sila kasali. Tama ba? Hindi namin isasaling sarili namin. Kaya para sa inyo ito, pasasalamat. Thank you. And once again, Attorney Viray, thank you so much. Game, ready na ba tayo, Ice? Kung hindi nila pinadala yung GCash nila dito sa ating chat box, hindi natin mapapadala sa kanila. So, let's go. Sabi nga ni Secretary Ice, presence is required. Are we going ahead? Sec Ice? Secretary Ice?
Yes po, for
Yes.
4 winners for 500 pesos.
Susan? Susan Sevilla wins 500 pesos. Tama
Why?
ba, Ice? Baka nagkakamali ako. Susan, are you still here?
Aya, thank you very much. Salamat. Natuto na ako, nagkapera pa. Thank you.
Padala mo raw kami ng crispy pata. May mga crispy pata ka pa ba?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Especially this
Ilagay sa
holiday
chat box.
season.
Kasali ba si Eileen Sim? Oo naman. Congratulations, Secretary Ice.
Thank you.
Hindi ko naisip na natanggalin si Ice. Next winner is... Oy, are you still... Mary Joy, are you still here? Mary Joy? Andito pa ba siya, Sec?
Opo, andyan po siya.
Okay, ayaw niya magsalita. But she's here, you see her. Okay, thank you.
Congratulations.
One more for 500. Mary Angeline Ong, are you still with us? Mary Angeline Ong. Ayan siya, present daw. Congratulations. Bago tayo mag-proceed sa susunod na ira-raffle, Sec Ice, si our soon-to-be member of the Rotary Club of Cagitiang Cubao, Beng Salud, would like to say thank you to those whom she had invited. Beng, can you say thank you to your invitees, please?
Putting me on the spot, Tita Dory. Good morning, everybody in Manila. Good evening to everybody in the US. I'd like to say thank you for my guests who took time out from Sunday morning rest day to listen into this very informative seminar conducted by Rotary Club Kagitingan Cubao. Present are Ma'am Abel Lagrosas of Sante Feeds, and her sister, Lisa Deligero of APM Agricom, and their guest, Mary Angeline Ong. Also present is my friend Edith Lagran, CPA. my daughter Leah, second year college student. Mary Grace Cortez of BDO Life Insurance. Hi, Tita Baby Roy. My Herbalife coach, Tina De Guzman. My friend, Architect Walin of WC Next Gen Builders. And Greek to Go in Anonas, Tita Dory, for authentic Greek food. Thank you, everyone, for being here today.
Thank you, Beng. So, babalik na tayo ulit sa raffle natin. Secretary, ay unahin ba natin ang dalawang 1,000 pesos for Philippine-based o punta muna tayo sa US-based?
Pwede po, US based.
Okay, yung ano muna, yung dalawang $20. Papadala namin sa Saturday para hindi tayo nagmamadali sa money transferring, pero dalawang $20 for those outside the Philippines. Tama, Ice, no?
Yes po.
Okay, let's go.
May Flores, taga outside the Philippines po ba siya?
Hello po. Thank you po.
Ay, teka. Ano ba itong binibigay natin? $20, no? Sa labas ng Pilipinas?
Yes po.
Nasa labas ka ba ng Pilipinas, May? Or nasa Pilipinas?
Nasa Pilipinas. Nasa Pilipinas pa.
Oh, sorry. Itong next price natin ay only for those outside the Philippines.
Okay po.
So, sorry,
Yeah.
May.
Pero i-add ko po ba rin siya?
Ibabalik mo siya, di ba?
Babalik ko po siya. Hindi ko po siya i-remove.
Oo.
Baka manalo siya ng 1,000.
Oo.
Okay
Sorry,
po.
May. Are you in the Philippines or outside the Philippines, Emerald?
Family, Philippines po.
Philippines po.
Oh, sorry again.
I-add ko na lang po siya ulit.
Hindi ka kasali. Parang hirap palang hanapin yung mga outside the Philippines. Si ISP Melville, tigalabas din siya eh. So, paano ba gagawin natin? Siguro yan na lang natin kahit nasan sila. Kahit nasan sila, ang price is $20.
Yung kanina pong tinawag, okay na po ba yun?
Siguro. Anong... Ha?
Ano po yun?
Oh, si ano raw, si May?
May Flores
Anong-
na Emerald.
Oo. So, $20 sila. Pero kailangan pa rin nilang ibigay yung GCash nila kasi yun ang paraan kung paano natin mabibigay. Yung kay nanalo si ISP Melville, ilagay na lang natin siya dun sa isang 1,000 pesos. So isa pa, we still have isa pang 1,000 pesos.
Oh, wow. Thank you po. Thank you, Pipi Dory.
Congrats.
You're welcome. Kasi hindi namin na hiwa-hiwalay eh.
For last 1,000. Andyan siya.
Yarly? Are you still here?
Andyan po. Andyan po siya.
Nasaan? Pero is she present o yung pangalan lang niya ang present? Yarly?
Yarly. Andyan po si Yarly Lim for
Pero
1,000
baka
pesos.
nandyan lang siya pero umalis na siya. So going gana natin yan.
O, sige po.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. Sorry, you can't.
Sayang, but he's still in the webinar.
Pero minsan kasi nandun yung pangalan tapos wala na eh.
Opo.
Umaalis na eh. Kaya to be fair to everyone. Okay, we'll go ahead and pick another one. Another winner.
Another 1,000 pesos.
All the rest kasi sinasabing lang nandyan sila or nagta-type in. May, are you still here?
Yes, thank you.
Grazie.
Yes na yes. Congratulations, May.
Thank you, Pipi Dory.
Meron tayong dalawa na na cookies, pack of cookies, pero dito sa Amerika, dalawang pack of cookies worth $40 each. So, paano kayang gagawin natin? Dahil ang nandito pa nakasama natin si Delia Barcelona, si Auntie Aida Roy, si Maria, si Ea Prieto. Sino pa yung present? Sino pa yung present?
Sino po yung tatanggalin ko dito na taga-ibang bansa? Ay, yung taga-Pilipinas tatanggalin ko na po.
Si Delia nandito. I mean, nasa Amerika. Si Divina. I-wave mo ba, Divina? Wave ang cookies?
Oo.
Ano sorting mo mamaya?
Jaika, tanggalin mo na si Jaika. Jaika is not qualified anymore.
Jaika nasa Pilipinas. Josephine. Si Lange. Andiyan ka pa ba, Rose? Lange? Rose? Cousin Rose, are you still here? Wala na yata siya. Ang daming tatanggalin na, oh. Doris, baka naman pwede mong bigyan lahat nung nandito na nasa Amerika para hindi na... Ayan, si Rose Carlotto. Rose Carlotto, are you still here? Wala na yata si Rose Carlotto.
Ilan pa nandito?
Tinatanggal na natin. Sugar, wala. Yarly is in the Philippines. Arlene de la Cruz is in the Philippines.
Sino pa po dyan yung nasa ibang bansa?
Si Maria Prieto, Delia Barcelona, Aida Roy, Divina. Yan na lang eh.
Si Noreen Carada po.
Nasa Silang, Cavite. Hi, Noreen. Thank you.
Benjamin Enarva.
Daddy ni Chi.
Nandito po ba?
Pilipinas.
Si Divine, ito po, si closing remarks. Si Edith Lagran.
Edith, hindi ko alam eh. Pero si Jaika Monsanto.
If Edith is what? Abroad, Tita Dory?
Oo.
No, she's here.
Philippines?
She's my friend.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Si Jake po.
Jake? Jaika is in the Philippines. From the Philippines is Sir Benjamin.
Josephine Padilla.
Parang Pilipinas na silang lahat eh. Si Leah is the daughter of Beng.
Si Lange.
Pwede palang ganyanin, tatanggalin. Doris,
Yeah.
bigay mo na lang yung, magpadala ka na lang ng cookies sa 4.
Okay, sige.
Okay, ikaw yon?
Sino?
Ikaw yung nagsasalta, Doris. For those who are US-based, kindly write in the chat box yung inyong address. Papadalang kayo ni Doris lahat ng cookies. Si Ida Roy is from 64 Lanzones, sa Project 2 pala yun. Bigay ko sa yung address. Okay ba yan?
Text
Mahirap.
me the, send me
Kindly
the
write,
address.
kindly write in the chat box your name and your address. And Doris Manasdale will send you the cookies worth $40 each. Congratulations. Thank you to all. Meron pa bang gustong magsalita? Gustong share ng kanilang thoughts bago tayo magsara? Kung hindi, magsasara na tayo. Pero parang gusto kong tawagin si Melvir. Andito pa siya eh. ISP Melvir, any thoughts?
Hello po.
Yeah. Gusto ko lang marinig ang boses ng isang presidente. Any last thoughts?
Oh, okay. Wala naman po. It's just that I really learned a lot today. I'm a finance person actually, and this is really very relevant to my profession, and but not really strong in taxation. So that's why when you invited me, even though it's 8:30 on a Sunday, I gladly joined the webinar. And kudos to RC Cagitiang Cubao and its satellite organization, Rotary Club. Very informative and relevant and useful and helpful po para sa aming lahat. Thank you.
Thank you, ISP. So, magtatapos na po ang ating webinar for today. Hindi pa namin i-close yung Zoom to allow those winners, kung meron pa kayong, kung hindi nyo nailagay yung mga GCash ninyo or mga address ninyo, pakilagay na lang dito sa chat box. We will not close the Zoom yet until we get your details, especially those in the US. Ipakilagay yung addresses nyo. Rose, Carlotto, if you're still there. All right. Having said that, let me say thank you once again to everyone. And mula sa amin dito sa Amerika, happy Thanksgiving sa inyo rin, sa whether here or